All of us.
All of us.
All of us.
All of us.
All of us are lost.
All of us are lost.
Lost. Lost.
Hello and welcome to All of Us Are Lost, a rewatch podcast delving into the mysteries of that magical island 20 years later. I am Kat Hughes and joining me on this journey is Andy. And today we have reached the season 1 finale. We are here to discuss Exodus parts 1 to 3. There's a lot to discuss, so I guess we should get straight into it, Andy. Where do you want to start?
I think for these, we can maybe get the flashbacks out of the way quite early on. For pretty much all 3 episodes, we'll discuss this through flashbacks, and there's sort of 3 main stories that make their way through the 3 episodes. Going the kind of chronological events of the stories sort of across the 3 episodes is probably the best way to go. But yeah, flashbacks first I think is the best way because they don't show us a huge amount, I don't think.
No, because I think up until this point, obviously the way that the episodes have been structured is kind of like the flashbacks have revealed like some big secret. John Locke couldn't walk before he went on the island. You know, Kate, is a fugitive. They've all revealed something. But in this, it's just kind of like, this is how they got to the airport that morning, or that's how they got onto the plane. So like I said, there isn't really much progression. I mean, there's an interesting little bit with like Shannon and Boone where Saeed asks her if she can watch his bag, and then like to prove a point to Boone, she reports him, and obviously this is post 9/11. Saeed's instantly sort of bundled off for a check, which, considering that they're now in some sort of relationship, is kind of like, why doesn't she remember? But I guess that's Shannon's personality. She doesn't really, people don't factor to her. So that was but I guess the big one is potentially Jack, because we do find out a little bit more about him, and more specifically about his marriage.
That at that point it seems to be over anyway. He bumps into a character, Ana Lucia, played by Michelle Rodriguez, which I think this would have been quite an early role for her. I'm not too sure on her background, what she would have been in at this point.
She was already in. She's already been in the Fast and the Furious at this point, and I think she's already been in Resident Evil. So so she's already because I guess she was kind of one of the big stars, and it's odd that they introduce her here, because she becomes a relatively regular character to some degree in the second season. And I thought it was interesting that they introduced her here, because this would have been filmed a couple of months before they did any work on series 2. So they obviously knew early on about this character and that they wanted her for it.
Yeah. Could have been as well just kind of hyping up audience expectation if she was very well known. We've had mentions previously of other survivors potentially in the island, but the radio with Boone. Could she be one of them if they're bringing in a big star into the making? Sort of adds to that and adds to more intrigue for moving forward. But yeah, she has a kind of nice interaction with Jack. She's witnessed him basically screaming at an air steward or the check-in lady, I think she says, about his dad, and she's a nervous flyer. And at this point as well, Jack's not a drinker like his dad, because before his flight he's not drinking, and he asks her why she's having a tequila and tonic at 10 o'clock in the morning, which I think even any time of day, I don't think that sounds too nice. But it's interesting interaction. Jack's clearly, his marriage is done, but as you said, there's not a huge amount of movement in this. You've had the Jack one, maybe Jin as well, with a slight thing with him. another one I've kind of thought of was Sawyer, because have we learned his full name before, or is this we first find out it's called James Ford?
I think this is the
There's a
first time that we
kinda-
get the surname. I think we've had James. We've had the
Yeah.
reveal of James, but yeah, and we find out that Sawyer has been deported from Australia for getting into a bar
Yeah.
fight with a politician. So Sawyer is not welcome back in Australia under any circumstances. He also broke that policeman's cup, and he seemed quite upset about that as well.
Yeah. So we have that kind of small bit with Sawyer. Jin has an altercation in a bathroom with one of his father-in-law's employees, who just informs him that he's going to be delivering the watch to his man in LA. But they all are very snippety. There's nothing that really kind of lingers. You get maybe slight crossovers like Shannon inside. We'll maybe come to the sort of last shots of everyone when we get to the end of the episode, but the flashbacks, Charlie's isn't really anything. He's just kind of in a hotel room. He's been won over by a supposed fan who was just looking to score off him, and they just have an argument and a fight, but he manages to hold on to his heroin. Michael and Walt, again, they're just, the relationship hasn't moved or changed any, but Michael is having a conversation with his mum on the phone, and he's like, "Can you not just take him? Like, I'll pay you," essentially. And Walt hears him saying that. So maybe it shows that maybe in their relationship, the way that we've saw Michael and Walt, it's been a bit one-way street, as in Michael's really trying really hard and Walt's just pushing back against him. But we're now seeing maybe what Walt's felt, like he wants nothing to do with me, so that's why there's that pushback. So there's slight snippets, but nothing I think that really... They basically allow everything to happen on the island in this episode. Those are the main ones. Yeah. And yeah, again, Hurley's late for his flight and he just runs, and that's kind of about it.
2 minutes. To
Yeah,
Hurley
I mean,
running
I think...
from the plane.
Yeah, I think where the Hurley one comes, I think that's towards towards the later episodes.
Yeah.
It's a nice, as Hurley's been used throughout. It's a nice sort of comedy relief. It's kind of almost like a Chaplin-esque, like slapstick thing where his alarm hasn't gone off because the cables have burnt, his batteries have burnt, his car breaks down, then he's gone to the wrong terminal, and he's having to race across, and then they've already closed the gate, but then they let him back in, and he's staying in the same hotel as Charlie. You see him try to go down in the lift, and then you see that Charlie's in the lift. So there are all these nice little bits where, because you would, if you are on a plane with somebody, you do inevitably cross paths with them around the airport. So it's kind of, it was nice to see that represented. And I think that the Walt and Michael one is interesting, just to see the juxtaposition of how far they have come, And I swear it starts with Walt and Michael, and Walt's watching like a Power Rangers-esque program on the TV, and I swear that is something later on. I swear that there's somebody was a star in it, something to do with that. I feel that the show, it stuck out to me as something that is going to be relevant later. But I think the most horrifying thing from the flashbacks is Walt, and is that Walt is sat on the airplane playing on his Nintendo, and I want to say it was a Game Boy Advance. It was just one of the ones that folds up, and that is old.
Yeah, I think so. There's obviously going to be different versions of Advance, because I had the original Game Boy, from the late 80s, early 90s, whenever that would have been out. They had the Advance, which was also just a one screen but at colour. But then you had flip-it ones that had a Donkey Kong game, and it was just Donkey Kong that was on this, and you just flipped it up and it would work down both screens. So it was one of them. But yeah, it looked like some form of Game Boy. I'm old enough to remember having the original Game Boy, so even that tech, that was past me. I was maybe on a PlayStation 1 by then, so the smaller ones, I can't remember them too much.
But yeah, like you said, a lot of this is, I mean, there's a, we see John Locke. I feel that all of John Locke's, anytime we see John Locke in the past, it's just really sad and depressing. And even here, it's sad and depressing because they haven't got the usual chair that they use to put people in wheelchairs onto planes. So instead, they have to carry him, and it's that whole like indignity of like the way that he is treated. He is, because of this, he is sort of loaded onto the plane first, which then explains why nobody was like, "Oh, I knew that guy that was in the wheelchair," because he was there early to get on, and they had to bring him on in that way. So I guess that kind of answers one of the questions that the audience had at the time of like, well, surely somebody would have seen his wheelchair, would have seen him getting on, and this obviously explains away that. But yeah, on the most part, this is all about the island, and we start with Walt waking up, and he hears a noise, and it's Rousseau's back, and she has got quite an ominous warning. Just the others are coming, and
Yeah.
she presents them. She presents the islanders with three choices: run, hide, or die. Which is, really cheery prospects. But would we expect anything else from Rousseau, really?
No, not at all. She'll anytime Rousseau turns up, you're going to have a bad time at this point. Anyway, she's already captured Saeed, and she's trying to warn the other islanders at this minute. So she's trying to do a good deed, but it's just laced in sort of menace because she's been hearing voices. She's tortured one of the other islanders. She's had a group that have been killed somehow, or they're dead, and they had an infection, and she says they went crazy, or is it just the other way around? So yeah, when she's around, especially with such vulnerable people there, you've got Claire, who's bringing a baby up, and a young kid there, and it's Rousseau in that mix doesn't seem like it would fit very well, which is probably why she hasn't been invited properly into the group as well. It's interesting, just because her being there at this moment, there's sort of three main storylines that run through this, and her turning up at this point is the point of two sort of starting. We've got Rousseau's basically talking about, if you want to, well, she gives them the three options. They don't, Jack and Locke and the like don't take that. They take the kind of fight, but they're going to hunt for dynamite, and it's not for fighting, it's for Locke's end game, which is the hatch. Blow the hatch up, get everyone there, everything will be good, because we know that it's safe down there. Maybe Locke's just 100% faith in this mysterious hatch is it's commendable for him, but certainly it's him with blind faith again, very blind faith led, I think, John. So she sets them off on this expedition for a dynamite hunt, and we finally get to see. Well, first we get introduced to Arst, who is probably the biggest side character we've seen introduced so far, maybe apart from the Marshal.
Yeah.
It's not a huge amount of, and he does mention it as well. Arst at a later point, talking to Hurley, he says, "You've all got a clique. I can see this," and then he's rambling about school teachers and things like that. Yes, we're introduced to Arst, and it takes them on a hunt to the Black Rock for dynamite.
Yeah, I do like how arts is basically addressing what all the audience were saying. The audience was saying like they were already focusing on like these 10 survivors. It's supposed to be 40. We never see anybody else. So I do like that they brought him in, and not only do they bring him in, but they have him address that directly to Hurley. It's like I work in high school. I know how these things work, and then we also in the flashbacks we do see him kind of peppered around. Like he helps Claire at one point with her luggage, and Hurley tries to skip in front of him in a queue, and so he's the kind of suddenly he is becoming more important. And we have this fracture point where one group is the raft group are sent to focus on the raft, and the other group, which is Jack, Kate, Hurley, Arzt, Locke, and Rousseau are going to go and get this dynamite for the hatch. But before they go, we get this quite touching scene between Sawyer and Jack. These guys have been enemies up until this point, but faced with knowing that the raft is going to set sail whilst these guys are on this dynamite hunt and that they're probably never going to see each other again. Sawyer, he could be a dick and he could keep his knowledge of Christian to himself. He doesn't. He shares his encounter with Christian with Jack, and then Jack suddenly realizes that Sawyer has met his dad, and Sawyer kind of says all of those things that Christian wanted to say to Jack but never did.
Yeah, and this is, again, I think in terms of character growth, Sawyer's been the most obvious. He was the kind of hard-nosed, almost survivalist, the go-to guy if you needed anything, but if you had to have something for him. Because I think earlier on in the series, even that bit of information, he'd have wanted to trade it for something. He wouldn't have taken it. And it's saying that he does get a gun for it, though.
Before.
Yeah.
Before he gives the information up, Jack gives him a gun, which I don't think is the reason he gives the information, but it's showing a development in Jack and Sawyer's relationship. There's a respect without a friendship, I think. They don't like each other at this point, but they understand that their value that they've had on the island. And this moment for Sawyer, I think, is the part where he becomes more human. And even over the next sort of almost 2 hours of these 3 episodes, I think you even see him soften to an even greater level with Sawyer. And yeah, it's a moment, and Jack kind of is stoic in his reaction and doesn't really give him a thank you. He just gives him a nod and sort of see you around. But it's a nice way for those two to leave each other at the end of the series.
Yeah, and then the Jungle Crew set off. They head into the dark territory. I mean, I love that Rousseau is just, everything. It's like, are these the actual names, or are they just the names that she's given them? You've got the Black Rock, the dark territory. But she takes them into the dark territory, and suddenly the monster from the pilot episode is back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She mentions the fact that her crew, this is where they died. This is where, I can't remember the name she gives, but lost his arm. And Arzt is just like, nope, I'm done. I'm gone. I've had enough. I was going to help you with the dynamite. I don't think I needed any. We'll just be very careful with it. He runs off. A couple of minutes later, trees are getting torn from the ground. Arzt's running. There's lots of noise. And they all just hide. They don't have a particularly great hiding place. And Locke and Hurley don't really hide. But they just kind of hide within not branches, but that sort of bamboo looking type thing. They're not particularly well hidden when you've seen what this thing can do. And she says this is where this is a a security system, which for the island. And we've not seen a huge amount of the kind of jungle monster. Why does it need to be a security system? I know she says it's for the island, Rousseau, but for what reason? Protecting what? We know this island has some sort of, it is special, but a security system that seems to potentially see just anyone as a threat instead of maybe being a bit more selective doesn't seem like a particularly great security system, just general kill everything in front of it sort of thing.
No, I like as well that it has like the T-Rex method of attack, wherein it's visuals based on movement, because Locke and Hurley don't hide. They just stay still. Locke says, stay still. to stay still. So it's like the Jurassic Park technique. So, it's like, is there a T-Rex in there? But no, it's some weird security system, which we do kind of see a little bit more of a little bit later in this plot. But, the group survived this. And then suddenly there is a ye olde sort of pirate ship in the middle of the island, which, Hurley's like, how did this get here? And then I do quite like how Rousseau is just like, are you on the same island that I am? Like, are you still questioning it? I also quite like the conversations between Locke and Rousseau. Like, I kind of feel that Locke maybe quite likes Rousseau. She's she's a hunter. He notices some scratches on her arm, and it's, I don't know, there's just something there where it's like, is Locke trying to flirt with her? Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, she gets them to the ship, and then they've got the dynamite. And I mean, they're all pretty cavalier, really, considering that ship is a very, very old ship. And they're like, yeah, let's just get this dynamite from this ship. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just an old wooden ship, as they say in Anchorman. It's, the Arst is he a geography teacher? I can't remember his exact profession. I think it was mentioned earlier on. But he seems to have a good general knowledge, and he says dynamite made from clay that compacts nitroglycerin. And if it's in heat like this, it's going to sweat, so you have to be incredibly careful with it. So he then decides to have a casual conversation while they're sort of dealing with this nitroglycerin, and waves his arms about and asks us the ultimate sort of lost version of the red coats, not the red coats, what they called in Star Trek.
The red jacket?
Red shirts.
Red shirt.
I think it's red shirts, yeah.
Red shirts, yeah. The ultimate red shirt of Lost, so far, anyway. And yeah, he's no longer there, and as Hurley mentions to Jack later on, there's a bit of arse on your shoulder because there's just chunks of him everywhere. A short and sweet introduction, I think, for him.
Yes, and I guess we should do the life after Lost at this point, because yes, Art is very much dead. There are pieces of him scattered just everywhere. He's played by Daniel Roebuck, who is one of those that guys. You won't necessarily know the name, but you'll know the face. He's a big horror fan and has therefore done a lot of horror. He was most recently Santa in Terrifier 3. That's kind of his most recent sort of role that people know him from. But he's done a lot of Rob Zombie horrors, and he was also Grandpa Munster, the Count in Rob Zombie's Munsters. He's one of the marshals in the original Final Destination film. I mean, the guy's got 265 acting credits, so like everybody has seen him in something. And he's also directed a few things, and his most recent one is a little Christmas film that came out at the end of last year called Saint Nick in Bethlehem. So he's had solid work, like a lot of these people who have departed. He was kind of a minor supporting role in the show, and then he's gone on to do like that countless times, with the exception of some of his, I guess, Rob Zombie roles where he's been a bit more central. But yes, Arzt is gone. But
we hardly knew you.
Jack, Kate, and Art, he's gone. But no one really seems particularly sad or perturbed, or wary of the dynamite. They just, continue on, and just so then it becomes like Locke is taking the dynamite out and he's handing it over to Jack, and just John Locke cracking jokes about Operation and how terrible at that game he was, as he is handling dynamite after we've just seen somebody blow up for not handling it correctly. It's like John Locke is not. He's not all right. I'm not sure that that's when you should really be joking, John.
No, and Jack says to him, "Would you like to play games, John?" He's like, "Yes, I do." So that's just, again, Jack showing he has no trust in him whatsoever. I feel like Jack and Locke kind of use each other as a means to their own ends. Jack does it as the way Jack does it is he sees himself as the leader of the group, and he understands the value of Locke, whereas Locke maybe has a use for Jack and then him unlocking the mysteries of the island. And yeah, it's an interesting interaction with them. They get there, and Jack being Jack is saying, right, me and Locke, we are taking the dynamite. Kate refuses, and so they end up drawing straws, and that ones I'd take a seat. I'd take a step back. I would absolutely be the Hurley. Just Hurley coming along for this expedition seems a strange one. Why does he come along again? Is there a reason?
Maybe because Rousseau's there. Because I think Rousseau knows Hurley, and she liked the Hurley.
Yeah, maybe.
Obviously, Saeed is back on he's back on land, sort of preparing everybody to go to the caves while they wait for the hatch to become ready. So I guess it's because of how skittish Rousseau is. She needs a familiar face, and so Hurley goes. But yeah, he wants no part of it. And
No.
they make this big thing of drawing straws, but then Jack just swaps the backpacks and takes the dynamite that Kate is supposed to be carrying. Which I think is one of the things that irritates me a little bit about Jack, because I think Kate has proved herself time and time again as being like quite capable, but it's his hero complex / a little bit of toxic masculinity, thinking like, oh, she can't do it, I must do it because I am the man. So I don't particularly like that aspect of him. And then we get back into the jungle, and the security system attacks again, and it goes for John.
Yeah, there's it goes for John, but John also allows it, and so he follows it, drops his bag, runs after it, because he's got a level of overconfidence in him at this point. And the minute he's face to face with it, the camera zoom on him, it's just pure fear. I think he realises at that point he's fucked up and he needs to get out of there, so he stands up, tries to run, gets caught and dragged. And yeah, Jack goes again, full hero complex. For a guy who, you would think that the way he was kind of okay with Sawyer getting tortured, if Locke got taken away by a security system, would he be that bothered? But he tries to help him. And yeah, this is the sort of betrayal to Kate that we see here, because she has to get, or she says, I've got my bag. And we see our first, we've already actually seen a slight glimpse of it, haven't we? Just before Locke has the face off with it, because Kate looks up and says, yeah, I saw it too. Or Jack looks up and you just see a whiff of black smoke come across the screen. And Kate says, yep, I saw it too, let's get going. And then you hear the clicking, the usual sort of kind of telltale sign. But it works. Locke's telling them to leave him, but it works out in the end, because they try and blow up the dynamite, and that's when we get our first full view of it in all its glory, if you will. But again, still very brief, and where it rises, tries to drag Locke into the ground, rises back up after the dynamite goes off, and it is a plume of black smoke. Like, the only reference we've had to black smoke has been from what the others have set off to signal that they're on their way. So is there a link to that as well? But it's an interesting thing, that because we've seen this thing rip trees out the ground that must be hundreds and hundreds of years old, and it doesn't seem to have a huge amount about it, and it likes to live underground as well, which is where they're trying to take everyone to be safe. So yeah, it'll be quite something to see where they go with that, because at the minute, apart from slight memories, I have no clue. So
Yeah, and the aftermath of them saving Locke is a little conversation between Jack and Locke, wherein, Jack's like, "What the hell? You were told us to like let it take you into this hole," and that's when Locke reveals that he is. I think he says, "You and me are never going to see the eye to eye on this because I'm a man of faith and you're a man of science," and that's obviously something that we've commented on a few times, but now this is, the two of them, directly acknowledging that they're going to kind of have to agree to disagree on the island, and it kind of leads, Jack to say to Kate, "I think we're going to have a Locke problem," which again is kind of like teasing where the second season may go. And yeah, the group go on to the hatch, but I guess before we get to what happens with the hatch, we should go for a meanwhile. So Rousseau leaves. She shows the group the dynamite, and then she just gets out of there. She wants no part of it. She's done her job. She then randomly appears on the beach where everybody has been, trying to prepare. They're all being sent to the caves to prepare for the hatch, for the others coming. They don't want to be on the beach. And suddenly Rousseau's there screaming at Charlie and Claire that she needs Saeed. So Charlie runs off to find Saeed, and Rousseau she's giving Turnip Head some very creepy looks, and then Claire notices those scratches on Rousseau's arm, and then she suddenly has a flashback and is like, "When did I give you those?" Which is never explained quite how that fits into. We know that Claire was taken by Ethan, and that at some point she got away, and it's like, was Rousseau in on taking her, or did Rousseau help her escape? It's kind of unclear at this point what their story is. But then the next thing we know, Claire is face down in the ground, babyless, with blood pouring from her head because Rousseau has stolen Aaron, because Turnip Head now suddenly has a name.
Yeah, I thought maybe the Russell one was because quite early on, Claire had a nightmare about trying to get taken, didn't she? Or she said, or Jack said it was a nightmare, but she says no, someone tried to grab me, and I thought that was what that was maybe referencing. So maybe Russell separate from Ethan, but then that also leads you to think, well, Russo's must be in line with them. She says the others are there, but there must be some link with them that she's not told us about fully. It was quite a revelation because I genuinely had forgot about it. I couldn't remember Rousseau taking Aaron, or if for anyone who knows the Key and Peele sketch of Aaron, if you've ever seen that, that might be a niche reference, but anytime I see that name now, it just goes to the substitute teacher the Key and Peele sketch for me. And yeah, it was quite a revelation for me. I couldn't remember anything about it. This leads Charlie to go gung ho though again, and he's literally, you can't trust him with a gun. He wants one. He eventually gets one, and Saeed and Charlie are off on a run through the jungle. Just Saeed, in fact, I think probably one of the best bits in this whole arc is when Charlie blames Saeed, punches him, and Saeed just immediately grabs him by the throat and says, essentially, "You get one." And that's it. And Charlie just goes, "Oh shit. no, I shouldn't have done that." And yeah, and the two often are sort of buddy jaunt through the jungle trying to find Rousseau.
Yeah, and Charlie again ends up injured. He gets a cut to his head, and he's like, "Well, you've got to go back now." And then he's like, "Come on, you were in the military. You've got to have some sort of way to fix me." And the way to fix him is to sprinkle some gunpowder into the wound and then set it on fire. It's always interesting to see these little tricks. It's like in Dog Soldiers where they super glue Sarge's guts back in. It's always interesting to see these kind of like field medic things. But yeah, I think that, and obviously this journey is also so that Saeed and Charlie can happen upon the plane, and that, because Saeed doesn't know about Charlie's addiction, and Saeed, just casually mentions it's a plane full of heroin, and you kind of see Charlie like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Unlimited supply, and the sweat that was already pouring down his head is just kind of increased from the addiction withdrawals. Because I mean, how long have we been in the island now? Maybe is it
maybe a month?
It's been a month. But yeah, they say it's been a month. So, and he's maybe 2 weeks. He's not, he's nowhere near clean. If he was in rehab, he'd be allowed to phone people again at this point. Well, no, actually, he wouldn't. He still wouldn't be allowed to phone people. It's 30 days, isn't it? They tend to do. So yeah, he's by no means out of the woods. But yeah, this, I think, of all of the kind of stories that are sort of ticking over in this one, this is kind of the shortest. It's nice that we get to see a lot more of the island in this episode, because going over like cliffs and into the forest and everything, so we're getting a little bit more than just the beach or the caves. But the primary thing for this is for Charlie and Saeed to track down Rousseau, and Rousseau has taken Aaron because she still wants her child back, her child who was taken 16 years ago, and she thinks that if she takes this baby, that they will just hand over her child, who at this point, if they are still alive, is 16 and has never met this woman. I'm not entirely convinced that they would want to go with the crazy lady from the woods, because she's your mum, and she's given us this new baby now. Go on, sing your hook. And I think we should probably, just for the sake of, building up some intrigue, we won't say quite what happens when they find Rousseau and Aaron. And I guess we should turn our attention to the boat crew, the raft. It's a boat. I keep saying raft, but that's like when you see them rolling it in, like that's a hell of a raft.
I think, I don't know what the difference is between a raft, when a raft becomes a boat.
Living quarters?
Yeah, I mean, a raft. A raft for me is just like, some like logs or whatever sort of like together, and it's just like a square like platform sort of thing. But this is, they've got parts of the plane. Yeah, exactly. And this has got, they've got like compartments. They seem to have they've obviously got where their food is stored and stuff. This feels jazzy. I mean, there's a lovely scene towards the end of Exodus Part 1 where everybody is waving the raft crew off, and they're all giving like messages to put into a bottle, and it's kind of, that first part ends in this like really hopeful note of like, oh look, they've set off to sea and they're going to get rescued. But life at sea isn't as easy as people would hope it would be.
Yeah. And poor Vincent tries to swim out and get back to Walt, and then realises he's well in over his head and just swims back, because there's a couple of nice moments before the raft sort of sets off. You have Walt giving Vincent to Shannon, says, when my mum died, Vincent protected me, maybe he can protect you. Saeed gives Michael some radar and a flare gun for when they're out there. And then we have the best moment, I think, in the series between Sun and Jin, where they're both apologising to each other. I think they both feel like they've done wrong. Whether you lean on that is very dependent, but Jin uses a phrase that I think he says, "I'm being punished for making you suffer." And it's something that Sun later says to Shannon. She talks about punishment again to Shannon. But it was nice that they had a sort of reconciliation. Sun's written some English words phonetically, which phonetics in Korean, I don't know how it works. It just blows my mind how that can translate. But he does well with them later on. But life at sea for them, it's not the easiest. They get out there. Sawyer's been given the gun by Jack, which nobody else on the boat knows about. And the oar, is it an oar? Is that what they call it? Breaks off.
Pretty much.
Pretty magicians are out there. rudder. That's the one I wrote down the but I couldn't remember the name of it. And they are then, sort of panic stations very early on. For what we've seen anyway, we don't know their full sort of time out there. But Sawyer proves his worth, jumps in and brings it back. At what point Michael sees the gun in his shirt and is very cold towards him, as you would be. Especially if it only had like 3 bullets in it. There's 4 of them in the boat. But you never know. It was quite, I think the sort of the second part of the boat stuff is very quick. Like there's a bit of levity with Sawyer and Michael having a bit of banter about Bob Marley, and then Sawyer with the line, "Who the hell is Hugo and how does he have $160 million to leave to his mum?" which just shows how much he's been paying attention.
And
there's also that letter about he's reading, because he's reading everyone's messages in the bottle, which Bob is horrified by. But he's reading, there's that woman who's like talking like to her wife and to her husband and her kids and stuff, and he's like, oh well, that doesn't stop her getting really like snuggled up with like Scott, and then what's it? No, that's Steve. Scott's the one that died, and it's that whole thing, like you say, that Sawyer just hasn't paid any real attention to many of the people on this island, so he doesn't, like. I'm pretty sure Hurley has told somebody his name is Hugo, because I'm pretty sure Locke calls him Hugo.
Yeah, because when he done the whole manifest, I think that was when he was talking about no one knows anything. Hurley's just a nickname. My name's Hugo Reyes, and so people do know him as Hugo. It's like his Sunday name. But yeah, they have their brief moment of sort of peril with the rudder in this, but overall it seems to be a bit more bonding. We have again Michael and Walt talking about the relationship with Michael and his mum and why he wasn't allowed to see him, and Walt says, "Oh, I think she was wrong about it being better for you not to see me," sort of thing. And yeah, nice. They do have nice moments, and it then kind of carries on to them. Again, another part with Jin and Michael discussing English, and Jin giving Michael his watch, which we know there's a watch to be delivered. We don't know a huge amount about it, unless I'm misremembering something. And maybe he's just given him something. Maybe he's passed on a death wish to him because he really doesn't like him. But that's again a development of their relationship. They hated each other in the early parts of this series, but they've been working together so well and for so long that they have I think for them it's more than just respect. It's a friendship now with Michael and Jin, and a reliance and a trust in each other as well.
Yeah, and before they get out to sea, we sort of see them, like they found a way to communicate, even though, neither one speaks the other's language. They're like talking, like troubleshooting some stuff with getting like the raft to sea, and they're, like Jin's saying something in Korean, and then Michael's like, "Oh yeah, well I know, but what about that?" And it's like, well, how? Yeah. They've found this weird way to communicate with each other, and yeah, considering that. One of the early episodes was them just like fighting each other on the beach. It's quite nice to see that they have had this progression, and now, like you say, they do kind of like respect each other, and I guess they are probably the people who they are closest to on the island, with the exception obviously of Walt from Michael, but they are the two. They spent so much time together now. They are a unit.
Yeah, I think it's when they first try to launch and the mast breaks and they're blaming Sawyer, and Sawyer's like, "Let me help," and Michael turns around and says, no offence, we just work better this way. And as you said, there's absolutely no understanding. There's a lot of pointing and shouting, but they get each other, they know what they're saying, and they have developed a camaraderie on the island in their time there. And then you have this element of Sawyer on there now, and Michael knowing that he has a gun on him, and they have a conversation, and Michael's just like, "Well, why do you seem to just want to die?" And it just takes because now Michael's not got the trust with Sawyer because he's brought that on. If he wanted to, he could have thrown it into the ocean and it would have been fine. Like, well, maybe Sawyer would have questioned them, but you could have understood why he would have maybe thrown the gun in. Then I can't remember the exact line, but Michael says to Sawyer, "Well, people like you, they either want to be a hero or they want to die." And Sawyer's just like, "Well, I'm no hero." And he's maybe not been heroic in the series that we've seen him, but I don't think he's had a death wish as such. So it's interesting how they view each other from a sort of outside perspective, where Michael and Sawyer have had very limited interaction, and when it's been quite hostile. But he's seen that as being Sawyer just having a death wish.
Yeah, I think it's because he sort of says, you don't care about anybody, and Sawyer shares, they're talking about like Walt and like saying, the way that he treats you. And, Sawyer opens up to Michael and says, well, his dad shot himself when he was a kid. He doesn't also say that he murdered his mother, but he does kind of point to the fact that there isn't a family. So Michael's like, why are you here? You don't like anybody on the island. You don't want to rescue, and you surely don't want anybody. You also have like nothing to go back to. So you're either here because you want to be a hero for some reason, or you want to die. And yeah, I mean, I think this is what a month after Australia, and we know that Sawyer killed the wrong person in Australia, so he is potentially still living with that guilt. So I imagine he sees his seat on the raft as, if he doesn't make it, well, he doesn't deserve to make it, sort of that kind of thing. But it is. It's a lot of male bonding going on that raft in the space of, it's only been a few hours. I kind of felt that they had been on for longer before we get to the events of the last 20 minutes of the thing. But no, it's all like that same day. It's that same night is when it all sort of kicks off. So they do a lot of. I mean, you have to wonder, like, if they had been on there for a few more days before what happens. How much more would they have bonded with one another? Because they're already like sharing deep dark secrets. It's only been a couple of hours.
They would have been spooning for warmth, I think, if they'd been given another night. That would have been it, yeah. But as you said, things kind of... We're now at the point where we can discuss the three, but I don't know if the boat's where we want to go next, or do we maybe go baby, or...
It's because all these stories have been happening in tandem. There's kind of been the first episode and some of the second episode are more focused on the Jungle Crew. The second episode it ends with Aaron getting stolen, and then the raft is it launches at the end of part one, and then you see a bit of them in part two, but it's more sort of part three. But then it's in those last 20 minutes when everything comes together. So, and they intercut them really well. So you've got the build up to the jungle guys get to the hatch, and they're setting up the fuses, and they're setting up all the dynamite sticks, and Hurley, he doesn't want it. He also doesn't want to be anywhere near the dynamite with a torch, with a flame torch, which you can appreciate. So he asks for a flashlight. I mean, if they had a flashlight, why aren't they all using flashlights? I mean, come on, nobody listened to Arzt.
No.
And so it's building up to them doing something with the hatch, and then that's intercut with Saeed and Charlie finding Rousseau, and Rousseau saying, but I heard them whispering. They said they wanted the boy. They said they wanted the child. And so she's interpreted it as they want the baby because they took her baby. And it's about then that the penny drops that, well, there is another child, and there's a very special child on the island, as we've seen. And then we get to nighttime on the raft, the radar's working, it picks up a boat. Oh my God, these guys are going to get rescued. Boat pulls up. What are you guys doing out here? Oh, we've been shipwrecked on an island. And, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. There's some other people on the island. Oh my God. And then they're just like, we're going to have to take the boy. And that's when it's like, oh, that's who they meant. That penny. I remember like the first time watching the penny dropping and it not being the baby. And it's like, oh yeah, it's Walt. And then this battle ensues where everybody, Michael, Jin, and Sawyer end up in the water.
Yeah.
Walt gets taken away. He's just screaming for Michael to help him.
Yeah.
They blow the raft up. I mean, in any other show that would be your ending, but that's not what Lost does.
No. Yeah, and I think so. Sawyer, at this point, he may be thinking, thankfully, he's got that gun, but does he get a shot away? I think he does, but he's not a particularly good shot.
He gets shot.
He gets shot.
Jin
Jin
He
jumps
needs his
in after him.
glasses. He's not wearing his glasses.
That's true. I never even thought of that. Yeah, so he misses. He gets shot, falls into the water. Jin jumps in after him. Michael just gets kind of pushed into the water. They blow the raft up, and yeah, I think as you said, that penny drop is it must be one of the biggest sort of twists in TV history. That it's got to be up there. It's got to be up there with maybe spoilers for any other shows, Buffy dying or things happening to Hank in Breaking Bad. You know, and the tension racks up, and you've got the score in behind it of just building it up, and it's dark as well, so there's an element of fear. You feel like there'll be a slight happy ending, because I think this is intercut as well, maybe at a similar point with Charlie returning with Aaron, Charlie and Saeed returning with Aaron, Shannon embracing Saeed. You know, there's hope, and they're then going to be saved. But no, it's all just kind of even the happy baby ending, if you want to call it that, has a dark twist to it. You know, we mentioned before, right? We mentioned when Boone first fell out of that plane and we spotted the heroin, or when he first spotted the heroin, in the lead up to it, that this isn't going to go well for Charlie, and we see that he has kept one of the
Virgin Mary statues, I think, maybe.
Not very religious, and so he's kept one of them. So you know that's going to be a problem in the future. Then to have this sort of gut punch of Walt getting dragged away, and those three, they've been sailing for a while. Those four, how are they going to get back? The three that have just been left in the water. It's a long swim, and especially if you're someone like Sawyer who's been shot, it doesn't look good for them. And it's a quite a, I don't know if he's a well-known actor that's doing the talking, but he's been in a few things, hasn't he? That's doing the interaction between him and Michael.
Yeah, I think he's another one of those that guys. I think I need to see him in the day to remember him. But then again, at the same time as we've got this Claire reunion, like, oh, Charlie's got some drugs. Oh my God, they wanted Walt. They've taken Walt. Oh my God, are these guys going to live? But we've also got, just as they're about to set the charges off for the hatch, Hurley shines his torch on and sees the numbers on the hatch and is basically like, abort, the numbers are bad. But up goes the hatch. But then before we get to anything with the aftermath of that, or, you know, finding out what's happened to the people in the sea, we get a final flashback, and this is like a big montage flashback of everybody getting onto the plane, and we see them all, you know, going to their seats. We see Sawyer notice Kate is with the marshal, which we know is something that he says that he saw. We see there's a look between Jack and Locke, because it turns out that Jack's sitting only a couple of rows in front of Locke. They kind of sort of like nod to one another. There's, you know, Boone and Shannon. You know, Shannon is obviously forgetful, like Boone's there with her inhaler. You know, it's setting up like everything that we've come to see. We see Art helping Claire put her baggage up. We see like Charlie putting his guitar into the thing, and it's got that beautiful music, and it's all very nice and serene, which is in complete juxtaposition to the fact that we've just seen like potentially 3 characters killed at sea. And then we come back to what I hadn't remembered as the final shot. My final shot of series 1 in my head is the light going on in the hatch, which obviously happens several episodes. But instead, the dynamite has worked and it has opened up the hatch. And we just get that lovely shot of the camera from inside the hatch, just kind of pulling back and getting deeper and deeper and deeper as Locke and Jack peer in. And before we can see what's in, it ends. It's like just cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger. I mean, did we expect anything else from Lost given what we've seen so far? But it's just having to wait. Imagine having to wait months to find out what happened next. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I did it. Looking back, I'm like, how did it? Because even just watching these episodes went out as 3 parts. They went out 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks. So you had them getting waved off on the raft. That was that's a nice ending. And then you get Claire's baby's been stolen, and you have to wait a week. And then you get all of that last 20 minutes. And you have to wait several months. It's just, I don't know how I survived.
I don't know how we done it back then with TV, because I don't think people would understand now that so maybe 8-month wait, if that even. So it was maybe finished in about March, and you were talking September, October, maybe the next series would have been on. I remember even with things like Friends would have it, and it would have 4 or 5 months, and you'd have to wait for the next series. Now you get 8 episodes, and you need to wait 2 years. If you can remember what's happened, then well done. Like The Last of Us is just about to start back. Things like From. I think it's because TV is so oversaturated now. There's not, studios are focusing on too many things at the one time, or not at the one time. They have to sort of spread their load a wee bit. But at that time, I just remember you had such a horrible feeling in your gut because you knew you had to wait, and that not knowing what was coming next, because it would sit with you for days and days and days afterwards. And we've got into the hatch, we've got Bob getting taken, we've got, and now I suppose the baby, the cliffhanger would be the Charlie with the heroin, which is possibly to a lesser extent than the other two. In fact, it definitely is. But having to think to yourself, and I think because TV wasn't so oversaturated back then, you didn't have as many options. So you were maybe watching Lost, you were watching Friends, you were watching, I think Buffy would maybe have been finished by then, potentially, I'm not too sure. There wasn't as much crossover. You couldn't just stick Netflix on once you were finished and watch something else. There was a wait, it was TV that was interspersed with, dependent on what time certain sports were on during the season, whether it was in the US or the UK. So you just didn't have anything really to fall back on unless you had your DVD collection, which helped a lot maybe when the later series of Lost came out, because you could just go back and start again. But yeah, having to wait for that is just, even just now, thinking, and I've kind of watched a wee bit in front, and I'm going to have to go back and watch again. I want to go back and watch, having just rewatched the finale.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I just remember my mum being like, "Well, what's in the hatch?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know either." And she was just very irritated. Like she's not one for cliffhangers. Like she hates when a film has an ambiguous ending. She likes everything to be neatly tied up, and the fact that Lost gave like not 1 but 2 big cliffhangers, she was like, "But it's you need that to bring people back." I mean, now so many of the shows, they don't know if they're going to get another series, so they have to kind of wrap everything up enough, but maybe leave some threads so that they could unpick and do another series. But obviously Lost knew it was getting a second series, so they just and it was very popular, so they just didn't care. They were just like, "No, we're going to give you this horrible thing so that we know you'll all come back in another few months' time to find out what happens."
Yeah, and it's I think with those shows as well, because they were so expansive, they were on for almost pretty much half a year. They would have probably known about halfway if they were going to get it, because they weren't just all filmed at once. Like, filming was still going on when stuff was getting released. Certainly, I don't know if that was the same for Lost, but a lot of shows were like that. Whereas, as you said, nowadays shows wrap up. Like, at our time of recording, the new series of You's coming out. The last series of You could have finished, and that you would have went, okay, that's fine, whatever's happened there. But they've got their new series, so they can go again. Very few shows get that comfort blanket of knowing they're going to be able to go again. I think From, again, I mentioned From with Harold Perrineau, is one of those that finished and they hadn't confirmed a new series, but they left a slight cliffhanger. Well, in fact, actually, it's quite a big cliffhanger for From. They're very committed to their cliffhangers as well, similar to Lost, but certainly not to the level of multiple cliffhangers. And just having that comfort blanket taken away sort of changed the way telly is now. And but you're a fan of it or not, like the weekly release schedule thing, I'm out of that cycle now as well. I don't know about yourself. Like, I get very frustrated about a weekly release.
Daredevil can't
Yellow Jackets. Yeah, Yellow Jackets continues to do the weekly thing, and it's very stressful. There was one episode. Series 3's got, at time of recording, it's got like 2 episodes left. And there was an episode a couple of weeks ago where the ending was just a Lost style. What the fuck? And then it ended, and I just sort of sat there and was just like saying to my husband, like, but I need to know. And I think we didn't even have to wait a full week. I'd come back from Glasgow Fright Fest, so we were kind of watching it on like the Monday, so I only had to wait until the Friday. But it's like, I need to know, like, this is doing. I need to know right now. And yeah, I just don't know how. But it's because we didn't know any different. It's, we've been spoiled as it's coming now that places are trying to go back. I think The Boys did a similar thing where it dropped like the first 2 or 3 episodes and then drip fed them week by week. We've become so accustomed to know it's. I want to watch it as like in blocks, as like mini films. I don't want to have to do it one at a time and wait a week. I'll forget. I've got a kid now. I'll forget in a week.
And the thing is that it's changed my way of watching telly sometimes. There's some shows that I'll just be like, right, I need to watch it as it's been released. But something like The White Lotus, me and my wife decided together that we're not going to watch it until every episode is out. And I've somehow managed to avoid spoilers. But it's changed my kind of mentality of watching telly, because I know if I had to wait a week, it would drive me crazy. And I can't imagine myself, especially 2004, I've been 17, I've been grumpy enough, like, without having to wait another 5 months for Lost. And just to think the way it's everything, I think Kevin Spacey has a lot to answer for just for that, because it was House of Cards. Kevin Spacey's in general, but it was House of Cards, I think, was the very first one. He said you should be able to watch TV like you read a book and dip in and out whenever you want. And yeah, the weekly schedules now just drive me mad, but at the time it would have drove me mad then, but just a different level, because what we've had.
Yeah, that is season 1 rewatched. I think our next episode we're going to come back and we're going to do like a little discussion about the series as a whole. We've obviously gone in sort of like a couple of episodes at a time, but we're going to go back and maybe discuss what mysteries have or haven't been solved. Favorite characters, favorite episodes. That one I'm quite interested to see if we line up at all. But yeah, thank you for joining us on this season 1 rewatch. We will continue. We are going to do series 2 and onwards, because with, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like I'm properly invested now, and I think I have. Yeah. This series has shown me that I have forgotten a lot, so I do want to I'm committed to finding out where this show went, because I apparently can't remember.
Yeah, exact same for me. Can't wait to see what happens next. I will be binging a few episodes pre-recording and then have to rewatch them again to over the next few weeks. But I'm looking forward to the recap as well. As you said, favourite characters, favourite scenes, favourite episodes, favourite twists, because there's been plenty, and favourite weird things that turn up, like polar bears and big clouds of smoke that try to kill people.
So yes, thank you for giving us a watch or listen. Please do give us a like, rating, follow. It all helps. And yes, join us next time as we delve into season 1 as a whole, and then come back for season 2.